I'll just put up a really great website. I'll get my Instagram page going and my stuff will just sell. Doesn't work that way. And I'm going to step back. It might even do that initially, but you usually reach a point where you plateau and now you need to do something different. And that usually involves some kind of proactive activity. So, what's the first thing we need? We need skills, right? We're going to talk about what are those skills that we need. And these are the 4 core skills that when you look at your own business and you look at yourself or your involvement in this startup, do you have these skills? Business development, sales, the ability to find and acquire new business. That is a skill. I recommend you rate yourself from a 1 to 10 on that scale. 10 is you have the ability and you have proven in the past that you can go out into a region, find new businesses or people to buy from you. You've been able to interact with them and convert them into actual POs or cash, right? That's business development. You have a structured way of doing it and you do it consistently. A lot of people don't have that skill. They have never developed it because they often believe salespeople are born, not made. I believe sales is made. It's a mindset and it's an activity and it's a behavior, and you can learn it if you want to. Doesn't mean you have to love it, but you certainly need sales to get your business going. Territory management. Territory management. We have to know, and when I say territory, it could be a geographic territory. It could be a channel, right? Maybe it's a certain type of industry. That could be a territory. You might have multiple, but you have to know how you're going to spend your time in that area. So a lot of people think money is the greatest resource. And when you're starting out, you're cash poor, right? You're bootstrapping your business, maybe you're doing it all on your own dime, or maybe you found an investor who's willing to give you some cash. And you think cash is the issue. And it is to some point, but time is often the bigger issue. I've interviewed a lot of business owners, and they say at the beginning they work like 80-hour weeks and they put their whole life into it. And they just did a lot of behavioral activity and it almost burnt them out. And so when we're looking at developing and growing sales, we have to know who we should be talking to. We shouldn't necessarily talk to everyone. We don't want to reach out to everyone, but there's going to be what we call best fit clients. And you have to know who those people are so you spend your time appropriately. Not everybody you interact with gets the same amount of time. You have to be able to qualify them quickly to know what that looks like. Social selling. If COVID hasn't changed sales was changing even pre-COVID. Technology, right? Social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, right? All of that was changing how we interact with our buyer. It's accelerated. If your business if your product or service is a B2B sale, like business to business, like you are selling to other businesses and you have no LinkedIn profile, you are missing out on a massive opportunity. I don't know if anybody is as old as me, but if I went back in time to, let's say, like my 20s, when the internet was being born, if somebody would have said, hey, here's a Rolodex with 800,000 names, and by the way, you can search on it by like company position and years in their job and geographic location. Oh, and by the way, we'll give you a way to contact them. I would have been ecstatic. I'd have been, are you kidding me? That exists? Oh, thank God I don't have to cold call out of a phone book, right? I would have been ecstatic. But we find that a lot of businesses struggle to create a real LinkedIn presence. And it looks more like they're trying actually to be recruited versus, create a LinkedIn kind of on 24/7 brand. So branding is not just your company, it's you personally. It's not just your company, it's you personally. Are you seen as an expert? Do you put content out that people can interact with and go, huh, you're the smartest person in this area. I should talk to you, right? And we see that on Instagram with, social media influencers they're not experts, but they have some kind of brand awareness about what they're doing, and people then they like them and hence buy whatever they promote. But we can use these tools to kind of get our business out there, to get recognition. But if we don't know how to do that proactively, not just market, interact with people. Think of it as digital networking, the ability to talk, interact with your potential customers' posts. That is a skill set that people don't spend enough time on. If you want to ask, I'll go back to LinkedIn because it's the platform that I do the most work on, and it's the platform my clients typically spend the most time on. If I go to your profile picture and you got a fish with you, if you're not in the trout fishing business, you got to ask yourself, why do I have a picture of myself with a fish? If your picture is your wedding photo, if you are not in the wedding planning business, why is your wedding photo your profile picture? Right? Go out, spend a few dollars, get a professional, whatever fits your industry, and get that picture up there. I've seen too many people, it's terrible. Okay? Social selling is a skill. The other key one here at the end, your ability to qualify opportunities. When you're starting a business and somebody reaches out and says, I think I need your stuff, people go ecstatic. They go, oh my God, somebody wants my stuff. And we go like, whoa, this is great. This is amazing. Oh, please buy my stuff. And then we spend a lot of time giving them quotes and proposals, and maybe we do demos. We do all this stuff only to find out they have no money, can't afford it. Oh my God. They have no problem that we can solve, or they can't make the decision. When you're interacting with your leads, there's marketing qualified leads and there's sales qualified leads. Marketing qualified leads are different than sales qualified leads. This is a big problem that people have. This is a confusion. They think because I marketed to you and you came to my website and you filled out a form or something, you're qualified. You want my stuff. That is not necessarily true. So your ability to ask the right questions to find out if somebody actually has, do they have money? Yes or no? And I'll give you an example. There's a startup, a company in Edmonton that we just interviewed for a podcast about business, and they created this really cool platform that would tell you whenever stuff's happening around the world. It basically curate all of the social media stuff going on and then tell you, hey, there's something happening near one of your stores or your asset. You should do something about it. They thought they would sell that to journalists. You know what they found out? Journalists have no money. News organizations have no money. Why? Where do you guys pay for your news anymore? I haven't paid for my news in years. I read the journal, but I don't pay for it. So guess what? They had no money. And they had this really, in 2 years into their business, had this massive until somebody by accident said, who was in corporate security, said, hey, your stuff looks interesting. Can we buy it? That their business took off, because guess what? Big businesses with lots of assets have money that they want to protect those assets, and they're willing to spend money to do it. So you got to be able to qualify if you're going to sell anything. So let me go back here. Just some ideas around coaching and training. So if you're at the stage of a business where you actually have a salesperson or a team, a couple little things you should always do. Number one, monitor the skill of your team. If you have somebody doing some kind of proactive conversation with your potential client, you need to know what they're saying and how they're saying it. You got to watch game tape. Okay, so either you go on a ride along, or you watch the Zoom recording, or you listen to it. But you got to know what's being said, because you got to know what the gaps are. You got to help them plan for every sales call. What's the plan? What's my objective? What do I want to have happen? What's the outcome I'm going to ask for? Did I achieve it? Pre-call plan. That's it. It's that simple, but you got a plan. Don't just go into meetings without a plan. Training, skill gaps. If you are the business owner and the person wearing the hat of business development or sales, what are your skill gaps? We all have them, okay? What are your skill gaps? Do you actually have a sales process? Do you know what it is? Can you identify it? Do you know where you are in a sales call? Can you run it? Do you actually have any of that, or do you need training? If you're going to hire a salesperson, one of the best questions I always recommend people ask is, how much money have you spent personally on self-development when it comes to sales? Because that tells me if you even believe that sales is a skill you can learn, right? 100% believe sales is a skill you can learn. And I'm always amazed how people spend almost no time learning it, right? It is not magic, it's just a lot of hard work. Now, this screen's a little bit busy, but when we talk about skills, right, we're talking about there's these what we call these success triangles. And I really want just to talk about the yellow triangles. I'm not going to worry about the red and the blue ones. But if we're going to have success in this area, number one, you got to have the technique to do it. You got to have the ability to actually run a sales call. But there's two other pieces that you need there: behavior and attitude. Too many people in business don't do enough sales behavior. They are passive, they're aggressively waiting for the phone to ring. If you're truly going to grow your business, I'm going to share a number with you of how much time you need to spend in this activity. 54% of your day needs to be in proactive sales activity. It's a lot. 54%. It is one of the hardest things to do when you start a business. You got to get the flywheel going. You got to get that positive momentum, right? Behavior matters. You got to be actively reaching out either on social media. You got to be working, either the phone still works, by the way. Email still works. There's lots of the ways to do it, but you got to do it. And your mindset, your attitude is another key element. What kind of risks are you willing to take? By the way, being told no is not failure. Being told no is awesome because it means you're not getting a maybe. Too many people, when they're in a sales meeting, they'll take a maybe. Well, maybe I'll get back. Yeah, that looks good. We'll think about it. I think I might do it. I'll look at it. Let me go talk to my pet about it. My poodle has something to say. I'll go like have a conversation, that, right? That's a maybe. Your ability to get a no or a yes at the start of your sales process is critical. Because again, time is your greatest asset. And if you squander it, you will not have enough time to exercise the skills you need to get the business you want. Okay? It's not going to work. So you got to ask yourself, am I chasing rainbows and unicorns? Okay? Am I looking for that pot of gold, or am I actually talking to real qualified people? Do I have enough of those people at the top of my pipeline? Am I proactively doing the behaviors to get into conversations with people who have problems I can solve, have money to solve it, and can actually decide if they want to solve it? If I'm doing that, my business will grow. If I'm not doing that, your business will stagnate and probably die because you're just not getting enough. All right, mistake number 2. At some point, usually businesses want somebody in a sales role, whether that's inside sales, SDR, business executive, account executive, whatever word people will say, whatever word sales goes by in your industry or your world, they want somebody to do it because it's hard work. So the other mistake is they don't figure out who they need in that role. It's the biggest, most expensive mistake I see small businesses make. What do? They go, I need a salesperson. Let me just find somebody who's got lots of experience and I'm going to hire them. Oh my God, please don't do that. You could have a lot of experience. That doesn't mean you have any effective skill set. And it's even worse in Alberta, frankly, because in Alberta, we have this really weird thing going on called oil that really distorts people's sales ability. So when oil is $100 a barrel, everybody's boat goes up in Alberta. Everybody's happy. Why? Money is everywhere. It's not very hard to sell when there's money everywhere and people are desperate. Okay, that's just answer the phone, turn the lights on, and be consistent in your customer service. But when oil goes to, I don't know, negative dollars like it did in COVID, guess what happened to all the money? Spigots went, and they turned off, and everybody looked around and went, oh my God, I got to sell globally. I got to sell internationally. I got to sell to people who aren't just sitting next door to me. And how do I find this money? How do I do it? Do I have people who can even do that? It's a huge wake-up call. So don't get caught. When times are good, make sure you're developing the right staff. Companies are just made up of people. It's just a group of people all pulling together under the same banner, trying to achieve something. So if we don't have the right people in the right seats, you're in trouble. So a lot of times people, if they're going to be in sales, the reason they tell me that is, Chad, I want to make a lot of money. That is not necessarily a good motivator, frankly. It is a motivator, but it's not maybe the best motivator. If you're going to have somebody who's going to take over a sales role for you, do they believe in the core values that you have as a business owner? Do they have is there alignment? Do they believe in the core values of the company and what the company's trying to achieve? You cannot sell something you don't believe in. If you've ever tried it, you don't last very long because as soon as somebody questions why they need it, you're like, yeah, they probably don't, right? You don't believe in it. Like you're not going to sell it. It's really tough. So you got to make sure that you have core value alignment. It's really critical that they are in alignment with your company, your vision for your business. Because frankly, are they going to lose their home if you don't, if you can't pay the bills? They're not losing anything. They're an employee. They're just going to go on the unemployment line. If you're the business owner, your home is maybe your collateral and they come take your home. You got everything at stake. So right people, right seats. Do they actually understand what the role is? So a lot of people want to be in sales, but what they don't tell you is they want to be in account management. So they want to like I see this a lot when people come from really big companies and they start working at really small companies. So in a big company, everybody can be siloed in these little areas of expertise. And the company's brand name attracts a lot of attention, right? So people call in all the time saying, "Hey, do you got any of this?" Like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, man, everybody knows that brand. They're amazing marketers. It's not like if I made a cold call to a company and said, "I'm with Coke," they don't have to go, "Oh, who are you?" But when you're with a small company and you have no brand recognition, what's going to happen? You might not get the meeting. They might go, "Who? I'm busy." Click, right? So do you have somebody who is willing to take rejection for you every day, all the time? Like that sounds like fun, right? We all in sales, we just love being rejected. So you have to have the right mindset around rejection. It's an experiment. It's a science experiment. We're just trying to find people who have a problem we can solve, have money to solve it, and can make a decision. Those are three things. That's all. I'm just trying to find it. So if you've ever done any gold mining, right? Gold, it's rare and it's valuable. Why? Because it's not lying on the ground everywhere. You got to dig through a bunch of rock to get it. And if you kind of know where it is, you go dig in the right spot. But you need lots of equipment to dig out lots of rock before you find gold. It's the same thing with sales mindset. You have to be willing to dig and dig and dig to find that opportunity. So you got to have people who are resilient. You got to have people who are willing to take rejection. They got to know that they're just doing a role, it's not their identity. All really important. All right. So right people, are they tied in? Do they have the same beliefs as you? Screening, interviewing, onboarding. This is another big mistake. Interviewing. A lot of times when we interview for sales, we don't ask the right questions. The best predictor of future success is past success. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So if I'm in an interview and I say, "Hey, can you share with me your prospecting plan that you use to grow your territory?" And then I don't say anything else. And they go, I don't know. I drove around and then I saw some trucks and I called the number. I've heard that more than once in an interview. That is not a plan. That's random behavior. Sometimes it might work. A prospecting plan is, well, I went through our ideal customer profile. Then I did a search on LinkedIn to give me a list of 40 of those people. Then I crafted 40 unique emails to those 40 people that it was something connected that they had online. And then I did a call within 2 days after I sent that email. And out of that, I booked 6 meetings. And out of that, I closed 3. That's a prospecting plan. Then I know you've done it. Perfect. I know you've been there, right? So we have to ask the right questions. I want to know, if you come from a sales team, where did you rank? Hey, out of 10 people, where did you rank in those 10? Oh, I don't know. Well, you didn't follow the numbers? No, nobody tracked anything. Oh, red flag. I need somebody, if I'm going to hire my first salesperson, I need a winner. I need somebody who's going to win. I need you to be like first top of class. I need to know where you ranked. I need to know you paid attention to your numbers, because in sales, you got to know what your numbers are. Because if you don't know the numbers, what's the behavior? So we got to do that properly. We got to know, if you're in a business owner who's hiring, you got to have a job description that makes sense. right? This is really tough in small business. Guess what happens? I want somebody who can market. I want somebody who can cold call. I want somebody who can do account management. Oh, and I want a project manager. Good luck. Okay. You are searching for purple squirrels. They don't exist. You'll never find it. You got to know what you want and commit. If you really want a salesperson, that role better be 80% sales. Like serious. Nothing else. Don't put AR collection on your salesperson. That's another big mistake I see. No, sales. What is it? What are the activities? How often do they do it? What does it look like? Who's their best fit client? Right? They have to know all that. So you got to have an actual good job description. Onboarding, another huge problem. So in sales, especially small businesses, they want they want somebody like them. They want a sales entrepreneur. Again, you're hiring an employee. If they were an entrepreneur, they would start their own business, okay? So you have to give them some guardrails. You can't just go, just make it rain. That is not a recipe for success. Now, 1 out of 100 people will make it rain. You will find that unique person and they'll do it. 99 won't without help, guidance, and guardrails. So you need an onboarding plan. In the first 90 days, what are the skills they need to know? If product knowledge is important and they got to learn it, you need some kind of product knowledge test after so many days that they can demonstrate they understand your product knowledge. Not just hope you can't just hope they'll learn it. They have to demonstrate it. If they need to be able to do a presentation in a boardroom setting in front of CEOs and CIOs and CTOs, whatever C-suite, you need to replicate that as part of your onboarding and then have them do it and then evaluate it. Don't practice on customers. That is very expensive. Because what if they say or do something in that is not what you want? Oh my God, you just lost the biggest deal of your life, right? And when you're in a small business setting, that can be crucial. Don't practice on live customers. Okay, biggest mistake you'll make. So you got to have an onboarding process, skills, activities, behaviors they need to show you by specific times, right? It's going to take you more time than you think. You need to spend more time invested in them to help them get there. They are not you. Okay, don't just hope they do it. Big mistake. Coaching, gap analysis, motivating. Coaching. I know some of you coach maybe Little League and you've coached kids. Coaching means taking somebody aside with the skills they have, demonstrating a new way of doing that, giving them some practice, and then getting them to go to another level. It's no different in sales. The number one predictor of sales success is the amount of time you spend coaching your sales team. 3.5 hours a month is kind of the magic amount of time. Most people do not coach. What they do is they firefight. What happens? Salesperson says, I got a problem. And you go, okay, I can fix that problem. And then you go, you should have. And then you fix it. That is not coaching. Coaching is helping them gain self-awareness about their gaps, talking about activities, skills they're going to learn to fill those gaps or practice, then coming back to you and demonstrating growth. That's coaching. Time, effort, energy. It is not something you can just wing. It's an event. Ride-alongs, coaching events, watching their Zoom calls, coach events, really critical pieces. Motivating, how do we motivate people? Well, there's internal motivation and external. External is commission checks. People always think that people are motivated by money. I'll just give you this really big commission check if you hit this really big number that nobody in our company has ever hit, but I'll give it to you. I don't have it, it's not motivating. Okay, the salespeople are not motivated by the what if and possibility. They're motivated by loss, right? And what if I lose something, right? I already have it. Well, you know what it's like to lose something. It's worse, right? Then once you live at a certain lifestyle, if you have to go backwards, it hurts. You want to go forwards. You don't want to go backwards, right? So you'll do anything to get back to where you were. So motivating, you can do external, right? That's KPIs, behaviors, awards, recognition. You can do all that. But internal is much more powerful. Understanding their goals, their beliefs for their lives, what they want to achieve, and tying your corporate goals to their personal goals. There's your magic. If you have somebody who you have in sales who says, I want to go on a trip every year to Europe, that's all I'm going to talk about with them. How am I getting you to Europe? How are we getting you to Europe? How much money do you need to get to Europe? Have you shared it with your significant other? Does your partner know that you want to go to Europe? Like, that's all we're talking about. We're putting it on the wall. We're talking about it at our sales meeting because that's what matters to them. That's what matters to them. So your staff, it's really critical that we have this covered. This is the big area right here. Just a little stat for you. 52%, half the companies don't even know if they have the right person in the right seat. Now, some of you might have put somebody in that seat and decided they don't belong there anymore. That happens. It's really hard, but you have to understand, if you hang on to mediocre performers, this is again a huge mistake I see, for longer than you should, your business will not grow. It will not grow. If you hire somebody and in the first 3 months, you do not see proactive behaviors that gets new meetings, cut bait. You're done. They are not going to change. You are in the honeymoon phase in the first 3 months. If they're not doing it, it ain't going to happen. If you've given them clearly defined expectations, if you've talked about it, right? If you've coached them on what you expect, if it's they know exactly what you want and you've clearly defined it and they're not doing it, it's not going to happen. You've made a hiring error, move on. That doesn't mean they're bad people. They just weren't a good fit for the role. Maybe you have a different role for them. I don't know, but you got to move on. All right, so you got to have a hiring plan, just some things that you might need to think about. Assessments, tools around assessments. There's lots of, we call them psychometric tools. They're immensely valuable to give you another point of data about people's behavior and mindset. Highly recommend you build that in. Interviewing skills, got to have them. If you don't know how to interview, third-party interview. Bring somebody, an HR resource. I help people hire. I sit in and do sales interviews all the time for companies because I'm not tied to the outcome. I'm just looking for sales ability. Get somebody like that in your world so you don't make hiring mistakes. Onboarding plans, you got to have them. 90 days. How am I going to get this person up to speed quicker and faster? All right. So you got to have the right people. Mistake 3, no processes to support sales. Right? Somebody comes in and says, how do you guys sell? And they go, I don't know. The owner, Pat, Pat just does stuff. Okay. What does Pat do? Right? Nobody knows. And when Pat tries to hire somebody, they can't pass that information to the new person. When they go to sell their business, if you want to start a business and in 5 years sell it, the value of your business, if you can't demonstrate repeatable sales processes, you get less money. Like if you want to sell a business in 5 years. So just some thoughts around process. So what do we mean? We need a structured sales process. That means everybody should know if we start here, how many steps do we have in our process? In my business, do we have a one call close process? In other words, I got to get you into a meeting, and in that meeting, I got 1 hour to close the business. At the end of the meeting, if you haven't said yes, my conversion rate goes from 40% to 2%. That's a one call close. Some of you might have that. Other companies might have 6 steps. The point is you got to lay it all out and then go, do these steps make sense? What is my buyer? How do they want to buy? Because you have to also consider their buying process. So let's pretend it's government. You're going to sell to the government. And they have an RFQ, RFP process. And that happens only at certain times of the year. So you not only have to make sure you're starting your process before they start theirs, establish the relationships, get some contacts, help influence the RFP so that you can at least have a better chance of winning it, properly submit it by a certain date, right? So that you can even have a chance. That's an example of a very structured, defined process that the buyer is influencing. Depending on your product or industry, you might not have that. It might be, I'm selling to small businesses, Chad. I just go in and I call them. And then because I'm selling something that's worth 50K, I don't know, I got a meeting with the owner, and then usually have a meeting with the owner and then an HR, and then maybe I demonstrate something and then I close them. That's my process. Write it down, document it. What are my expectations at every step? What are the questions I want to ask? What does the buyer have to do to qualify for my next step? Because if you don't have any expectations on the buyer, you get stuck in what I call false funnel syndrome. You got stuff in there. People, hey, give me a quote. I'm interested. You give them a quote and then you never hear them. You get ghosted. Very frustrating, very time consuming. Being ghosted is the worst thing in the world, but did you tell them that they couldn't ghost you? Did they qualify for your next step? That's a sales process. Documented, written down, questions, spend time on this. Think about how your clients buy. How did all your clients buy from you originally? What were the steps? How can I add to that? Can we speed it up? Can I influence any? You're looking at each step to see, where do people drop off? Where do things get sticky? Right? Where do I go from 50% conversion to 30 or 10? Why is that happening? Do I need to change that? It's all about analyzing the process and saying, can I make it better? Your sales process should be, at least evaluated on a yearly basis, even if you've been in business 10 years. Every year, you should really rip it apart and go, why do we do this? Is it successful? Is it changing? Have the buyers changed? Has their expectations changed? Right? What do we need to modify here to be more effective? That's structure. Sales management, if you decide you're going to have a sales team, you got to have a management process. In other words, how often are you going to go on ride-alongs? What's your coaching plan going to look like? What's your accountability plan going to look like? What are the KPIs you're monitoring? What are the metrics? All has to be part of that structure. Compensation, how am I going to pay him? Some people decide to go what I call the low-risk road. I'm going to pay you 100% commission, but I'll pay you no salary, and therefore, if you don't do anything, no problem. Low risk to the business owner. Listen, most people will not want to apply for a 100% commission job, FYI. Like, it's tough, right? Unless you're hiring somebody who's 22 living at home in their basement of their parents' house. They don't want that. Now, can it be very, very lucrative? Sure. If you put no caps on it and they can really sell and make a ton of money, it could be perfect. But my recommendation is, don't, be fair with your compensation, be transparent. If you're small business starting out, you can't pay what the big people, you can't pay what the big companies pay. You got to attract people for a mission and vision and a cause. That's why your values, your story about why you're in business is so important. People want to work for a vision, and they want to work for a leader who's got a vision and a cause and a belief, not just to make money. The more you can tell that story, you can attract people. You got to pay them fairly, but you don't have to overpay them. So make sure your compensation is rewarding the right kinds of behaviors. That's another key element. So these are all the pieces that go into this stuff, right? So we call those cookbooks. Those are behaviors, accountability. What are the metrics? We want to make sure that we've got those in place so people know what the expectations are. So if I have to cold call 50 times a day, I should know that I got to do it. And then we got to monitor it. Are we doing it? If I got to do LinkedIn posts, how many of those do I got to do? Do I have to ask for referrals? How many should I ask for in a week? Like, those are all accountability, black and white numbers. Account planning, SWOT, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Do I understand, who's going to be taking this business? In sales, I can't have a leaky boat. So either we are trying to bring new customers in, or we're trying to plug the holes in our leaky boat. But if we're losing clients as fast as we're bringing them in, that is not growth, right? So we got to keep people, we got to protect, and we got to grow. What's our value proposition? In other words, can people answer the question, why should I buy from you? Or what makes you different? And just saying to somebody, because we're the greatest and we're from Edmonton and we're awesome, is not a value proposition. Nobody will believe you except your mother, okay? Your mom will believe you, but no one else will, because you're in sales, and they're going to be skeptical. So we have to have a story that we tell from our client's perspective. Your sales process has to be templated, written down. We already talked about that. Scary fact, 43% of companies don't follow a process. I will say in Alberta, I'm going to say it's higher. I can't tell you how many times I talk to small businesses. Hey, can you share with me your sales process? Can you give me your sales playbook? And I get, well, we thought about that. Well, we're working on it. They don't have one. Okay. Very dangerous. And I would say in Alberta, it's like 80%. And it is one of the most important documents I think you need to create for your business. This is the Sandler sales process. I just wanted to share with you what one could look like. We like to use a submarine because we believe in sales. Sales should not be something that we do too like it shouldn't be. You shouldn't feel like you're in a sales process. It should feel like I'm just in a conversation. We don't need to be in people's faces. But when I share this with people we work with, we talk about the bonding and rapport. How do we strategically connect with everyone we meet? Not just people who are like us, not just people who sound like us and look like us. How do we meet and connect with people who don't sound like us and don't look like us? That's the ability to connect, bonding and rapport. How do you make people feel? Sometimes it's as simple as listening. Have you ever been to a store lately and the person at the store, you don't feel like you've been heard? They just want to tell you what their best thing is and what they're like. That's that's a problem. Bonding rapport. How are you connecting with people on purpose, not by accident? We use this term called an upfront contract. Really, it's just about setting a decision, like creating an agenda for a meeting and with a decision and an outcome. Does every interaction you have with a prospect or a client have a decision and an outcome? And have they agreed to it? If you do that alone, you will speed up your sales process. Not just, well, get back to me when you think you might want it. No, no, no. There's a decision to be made. Either we're going to move forward to the next step or we're not. That's okay. No is acceptable. Not everybody's a fit. Pain budget decision. I already mentioned these in one way. Problems I solve, money to solve it, and the ability to make the decision. Do you actually understand that? Do you have a process for getting that information as part of your sales process? All of that is done before you decide to give a demo, an RFP, a quote. Because too many companies I run into get bogged down in quoting and giving people pricing only to be ghosted after. I've talked to small business owners that Chad, I spend my whole weekend doing quotes. Why? How many of those do you close? Well, 10%. I'm like, do you like that number? Do you think it could be better? Uh, Listen, 30% is average, 40% is above average. If you're like the only thing in that space, yeah, maybe you can dominate and get to I talked to one guy, they're 90% close rate, but they almost have a monopoly. Pretty rare. So you got to know all that before you actually start, giving them pricing. And then lastly, post sell. Do you post sell the commitment? Do you actually get people to say, yes, this is my commitment, I will get back to you? That's part of the process, so you don't have what's buyer's remorse, or you don't have the other company that just lost the business coming back and promising the world to get it back. We call that vendor's vengeance, right? Because they don't want to lose it. So what do? Slash their prices, right? I'll promise you anything to keep the business. So your sales process could look something like this. This is one we teach and train all the time. Mistake number 4, do not spend enough time understanding their customers' needs so they can build a successful sales strategy. All right, this gets into marketing. Sales and marketing are intertwined. Having a plan, lead development. How are we going to find the leads, create the leads, start the process? What's our strategy here? As I had mentioned earlier about that story, the company we talked to, their strategy was sell their platform to newsrooms. That was their strategy. And that was their connection. They knew lots of people in that world. They came from that world. This is why they started their business in that world. And then what did they do, right? They started reaching out to all these news organizations and sold nothing because their plan was they had the wrong ideal fit customer. So it's really important to ask yourselves at the start, who are the people we're going to sell to? What do they look like? What do they sound like? What level do we need to be at in the organization to have these conversations? A lot of times I see other companies get stuck in procurement. They're selling to the procurement officer who is just getting 3 bids, and they wonder why they never get chosen unless they sewer the price and take it at a loss. It's because they haven't established any relationships in that business anywhere else other than procurement. I know in a lot of businesses in the Alberta space, they're selling to the Suncors of the world, and they have very rigid process around procuring, vendors and services, right? And everybody sees them as like the big dog. Well, you can spend a lot of time going for the whale, like Moby Dick. You're going for the whale, but you end up starving because you haven't sold anything to anyone else. So it's really good to have a balanced strategy where you don't have to sell $1 million sale to keep your business afloat. Do you have any $10,000 sales? Do you have any $50,000 sales? Do you have $100,000 sales that can happen quicker, that feed everything? Maybe they're not as profitable. Maybe they're not, that's not your preferred space. But as a strategy, it's what can keep the lights on and hire people while you work on the massive growth opportunity. So you got to really, when you think strategy, you got to think, what do I have in which bucket? Who's doing it? How are we developing leads and conversations? What are those activities? Do we want to be part of a trade show? Like, what are we going to do here? How are we spending this money? Are there going to be people in those places that we can sell to? I always say to owners, I say, listen, if you're going to go hunt water buffalo, don't go to wood buffalo, right? Because there's no water buffalo in wood buffalo. There are buffalo up there, I think, but not the right kind. And so I see a lot of small business owners spending time in places where they just don't have the people who can buy your stuff. They're just not there. They're the wrong people. And sometimes they disguise themselves as the right people, but they're not. So I'll give you an example from my world. In my world, a lot of times HR are the people who reach out to me and say, Chad, we need some skill development around sales. I know they're not the right people though. They can't say yes. And unless they're willing to spend their political capital on getting us in a room with the people who can, it's going to go nowhere. Salespeople who reach out to me and say, Chad, I want to be better. And I say, have you ever spent money on yourself for training? And they say, no, I want my company to do it. It's not going anywhere, right? They're not the right people. So you got to be very clear on who your best fit client is, and then be very rigid about only prospecting and marketing to that best fit client. It might feel like you're narrowing your possibilities, but I see too many businesses just wasting time with leads and stuff it's not real. It's not real. So there are tools for business development. There are technology for business development. I recommend people buy, you can actually buy technological tools that help you. If you're going to cold call, there's tools that help you do that better. If you are going to market, there are tools that automate marketing. If you need a list, there are companies that curate lists for you. Know what those tools are, buy them, then use them. Because technology is a great way of basically enhancing the horsepower of the team who's charged with doing it. If you got to go out and say, well, we need to sell to small to medium-sized business in the Edmonton region, just go start looking through websites. You're going to take you a ton of time to do that. Or you can take some money, buy a tool that lets you do that almost instantly, gets you a list that you can start proactively creating cold emails, phone calls, whatever you want to the right people. Do it. Team development, client retention. This is the other key part. So as you grow your team, that's part of your strategy. Do we have the right people doing the right roles? What are the roles we're going to need in 2 years? That's the other part. As a strategy, do I have internal support roles that we're going to need? Do I have technical support roles that I'm going to need? Client retention, like I said, don't have a leaky boat. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they think about growth, they only think about the next new client. They don't think about the one I got. There's tons of opportunity with the ones you already have. It's way easier to sell more to people who already buy from you than it is to go find new people. It's just way easier. So a lot of companies do not maximize those relationships. In fact, they treat them like transactions, and they don't make that relationship valuable to the people who are buying from them, other than, well, I sold you the product and I did it really well. Yes, but how did you connect to that person? How did you make them feel? Do they feel like your relationship is invaluable? Have you become a trusted advisor to that customer? If you can sell and if your customers are long term, do you have quarterly meetings to check in with them about how your company's doing, your progress, things you're bringing to the market that they might be able to buy? Like, are you doing that with them? Or are you just hoping they look at your website and say, oh, we could buy this from them, we should buy that? Be proactive, right? Make sure you understand, your customer today. Make sure that you're making them feel valued. Make sure that you're looking for opportunity in customers that you already have and retain them longer and increase the value if you can. By the way, you might need to get rid of some clients because they're not profitable. They don't get how you guys do business and they don't want to do it the way you need to do it. You might need to say no. You might need to consciously exit a business relationship. Don't hang on to bad customers because they will, again, suck all your time and leave you very, very frustrated and leave your team frustrated, especially if they're highly, high demand type clients. So there's a lot there: skill, staff, structure, and strategy. There's lots to think about in terms of skill development, staff, do I have structure? And I always say, you know what, if you're going to start anywhere, document your sales process, number one. Number two, get some skills. Like, do some self-skill assessment. Am I really that good at sales? Why do I think I'm that good at sales? Is my team really that good at sales? Why do I think they're good at sales? Don't just look at the end numbers, which is, oh, we're up 20%, we're good at sales. You know what? The question you need to ask yourself is, are we outperforming the market? Right now, if you have any stocks, they're taking a hit, man. Stocks are taking a hit. We all know this. If you looked at your portfolio, they're going down. You might be mad at your investment advisor saying, oh, I'm losing money. My investment advisor is bad. Well, if you are only down 10% while everyone you know is down 40, maybe you have a brilliant investment advisor. Just saying. They might be brilliant. On the alternative side, if the market's up 20% and you're not up 30, are they really doing a great job? Or are they just average? See, it's always around how are you doing against your market? Are you gaining market share? Are you growing? Are people, yes, in lean times, maybe they can't spend the money, but are you creating those relationships that when the spigot back opens up, all of a sudden, all that hard work you did, money is flowing in and you're seeing massive growth, right? So you want to ask yourself, I always say to companies, pick one thing to work on every 90 days and make sure that you're developing it. Last mistake, no budget. It's like anything. Oh, Chad, we have no budget for skill development. Is this self-serving? 100%. I train people and I make money off doing it. So of course it's self-serving. But reality, if you are not going to spend money on yourself to grow and get better, what are you going to do? And maybe it's just not money. You got to budget time. Even if you can't afford to spend money, are you budgeting time to get better? That's the key piece. Are you actually taking the time for growth so that at the end of the day, you are reaching or your people are reaching a new level? Make sure that you're doing it. If you're not putting money away and you think, oh, geez, I don't know, I'll try to find some money someday to do this. It's like anything. You never do. So before you get mission critical and you're on the table and your company's about to die because you got no sales, not the time to do it. I talked to one person that I interviewed not too long ago, a local company. She said one of the best things she ever did was she spent money on sales and marketing at the beginning to make herself look bigger and more, important than she really was. And she said that made all the difference. Don't be afraid to invest if you believe in your product or service, to make the investment at the start, to make yourself look a little bigger, a little more maybe important than you are. She was a basement-based business at the time. She is now a $20 million business 9 years later. So she did something right. And that was a really interesting piece of advice that I heard. So if you're going to learn something, number one, you got to be aware that there's a gap. Now that awareness can be created through, ride-alongs, watching, kind of, seeing what's going on. So A, do they have awareness? B, is there knowledge? So they might be aware of it. Do they have the knowledge? Do they understand what they should do? Can they actually apply it? In other words, take a skill and apply it. Like in sales, overcoming objections is probably the one I hear the most. When an objection comes up, what do? Do they have the skill set to do it? And then, of course, what's their habit? Do they do it regularly? Another one that's really a really good skill to learn is how to increase referrals. I haven't met anyone in business who says, I don't want a referral. We all want referrals. A few people have your cameras on. Do you want a referral? Of course we do. We want referrals. So the question is, if you don't ask for them, how are you getting them? By accident? So it's a skill. How do you ask for introductions? How often do you do it? When do you do it? What do you do when you get one? How do you thank people for giving you one? Right? These are all things that if you do them well, your inbox will be full of referrals. Of course, if you have good products or services to boot. But again, a lot of people in sales, they just go, oh, I got a referral. Great. They never tell the person who gave it to them what happened. They don't tell what went on. They don't thank him for it. Nothing. And so guess what? They don't get another one. Right? So it's all things that we can do. So fun to be the chief problem solver. In your world, I don't know if everybody on this call today is in that position of owning the business or in a startup or thinking about owning a startup. Here's the thing, right? It's all about growing the team and growing the skill set. Sales is not magic. Sales is a lot of hard work. It's not. It's about process and systems that if you do consistently, you can experience exponential growth. It may not happen as quick as you want, but it can happen. So I'm at the top of the hour. I don't know if anybody has any questions in the chat box that they want me to talk to.
First thing, Chad, a couple slides back, we just all wanted to point out you have do instead of don't or do not.
Sorry, failed my English test.
Any questions, anybody?
I'd love to hear an example of a company that was making a big mistake and they fixed their sales playbook or something like that you've experienced, that they've just fixed something small that like made such a big difference.
So that they had a problem with their sales process and they just modified it.
Yeah. How did that, like, what's an example of that?
So typically, it's not so much that they had to change. So one of my clients, they were averaging about 6 months in their sales process, and what they did is what they never did before is get people to agree to make a decision at the end of their meeting. Like they would just say, okay, well, here's our presentation, here's what we do, here's some pricing, and the person would go, well, that's great, thanks. We'll go away and think about it. They go, okay, great. Get back to us when you can. And they still sold stuff because people liked their stuff. It's a really good product. But what they didn't do is they never said, at Sally or Pat at the end of the meeting, listen, if this is not a fit for you, can you just say no? Like if this isn't going to work, can you just listen? No harm. We understand. We're not for everybody. But if we're not saying no, the next step in our process is we're going to be signing an agreement. Does that sound fair to you? That little change took them from 6 months to 4 months. So they gained 2 months of time on their average closing cycle. Now, the other part, the conversion rate. So what happened is their funnel went from, I got 800 people in my funnel to like, it got rid of a lot of dead weight that they put back into their marketing funnel. It freed up time for people to actually do a better job of selling to the people who actually were qualified. Over time, over 3 years, they had 10x growth in 3 years. So it was massive. Little change, right? They had good product, good service. It was, they had the right stuff for the market, obviously. But that little thing in their process made a massive difference.
Francisca, did you want to ask your question or?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Thank you. You're talking a lot about company to company. I'm just wondering a lot of on sales to individuals, and is it similar with in our focus?
So is there a big difference between B2B sales and B2C? Is that kind of the question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So B2C sales, first of all, how you reach out to people is going to be a little bit different, right? Because, you're going to start with more what I call the soft social media sales, like, whether posting things on Facebook about your company. You can You can on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a B2B site, but you can, and I have met people like who sell homes, for example. So they're selling to an end user, an end consumer. And what they try to do is become an expert on home sales on that site to attract people to follow them. And then, of course, when people comment, then they engage with them on the site. You can do that on other platforms, but I think on Instagram and like Facebook and Twitter and all that, that's people, you know, you have to be much more cautious of that because you're going to be seen as this, they'll block you a lot quicker because they don't see Facebook as a place to do necessarily business. It's a place to really interact. So a lot of times if we're going to connect, we got to start with a marketing call to action and then get them in the funnel where they're open for us to connect, whether that's through free offering, some kind of knowledge thing that you can give them so that you have permission now to talk to them. There are rules around that. You have to be a little bit careful on. Trade shows are another good place pre-COVID. They're coming back if they have your right audience because it attracts a lot of people to one spot that you can then interact with people. So trade shows for B2C consumers can be, or B2C businesses can be pretty valuable. The other thing with B2C businesses, Google reviews, getting your current clients to do them and asking for them consistently is a key strategy. I don't think people just hope you do them, but you got to make it easy for people to do them. Because you know we all like you go to a restaurant, what do? Look at the Google reviews, right? So if you're in the B2C world, you got to build that trust factor, and that's through reviews. So you got to ask for them. You got to ask people to do them. You got to make it easy for people to do them for you. And then referrals and introductions, another huge part of it. When you do a really good piece of work for somebody and you say, Sally, listen, at the end of this engagement, I'm going to ask you for introductions, but only if you can rate me 9 or above. Because if you can't rate me 9 or above in whatever I did for you, that means I didn't fulfill my customer service promise to you or my brand promise, because then I have an issue and I need to go fix that. Because you would not want to recommend me if you can't give me a 9. Is that fair? Of course I wouldn't. Okay, great. So then when we, at the end, Sally, remember I asked you, you know, how would you rate us or whatever, you know, would you rate us above a 9? If so, great. Now, in your world, are there other people like you who could benefit from our service? Now, people aren't comfortable doing that, but let's be honest. Like, if you're in the hairdressing business and you love your hairdresser and somebody's like, oh man, I think I need somebody to do my hair. You're like, oh, I got somebody, right? You're like, oh, I love my hairdresser. I'm going to introduce you. You have no problem doing it for people you really love. So if they really love you, you know, sometimes you just got to ask. So those are if I'm B2C, I'm really leveraging the referral strategy and on the social media, Google reviews, testimonials. I'm going to ask them if I can make a video of them sometimes saying good things about me. All those little things give you credibility that make more people reach out. So your start of your funnel might look a little different, but once you get into the sales process, it's no different, right? Once you get them in, it's still qualify. Can we do it for you? Do you have a problem? Do you have money? And can you make a decision?
Yeah.
Same process. Any other questions?
Mitali has a question. Mitali, you have your hand up?
Yes. I wanted to
Thank
ask
you very
about
much.
LinkedIn. Yes, I wanted to ask about LinkedIn. Like, I want to sell my product to individuals, but my target market is like working class or like people who are having busy schedule. So I was thinking that I can use LinkedIn. And can you please give an example that how can I use LinkedIn to connect to those people on individual basis, not for their companies or something, but they are working and I find them and to connect them.
Okay, so LinkedIn. So typically, there's certain type of people who are on LinkedIn and certain type of people who are not. I would say if you're trying to reach people in more of the blue collar world or the trades world, I think you won't find as many on LinkedIn. Not saying you won't find any. It's just my experience you won't find as many. If you're looking for people in roles that are more quote unquote like the white collar world, like accountants and lawyers and those types of people, you'll probably find them on LinkedIn. So you got to
Yes.
know if your platform actually has the people who could buy your product or service first. So whether they're middle class, working class, busy, that's the first question. Where do they actually spend time? What's the demographics? Once you figure that out, if they are on LinkedIn, okay, let's pretend they're there. What I would recommend is do not be like some people on LinkedIn, which is basically a spammer. You've seen those, right? What do they do?
Yes.
They use InMail and they just go, here's why I'm great. Blah. Nobody reads that. Okay? Nobody reads that. So you have to have, you got to create an audience. That means creating content and posting and getting people to start, going, hey, that's interesting, right? Now, and then of course, engaging in their posts. You got to find like, so who are these people? And so I use LinkedIn to find people with certain titles. I'll search for VPs of sales, presidents, owners, and then I'll look for people who've been in that role for 2 years or less. And then what I'll do is I'll use video. So I don't know if you've ever used video before, but there's little tools like Vidyard, which I can leave you a little introduction, because video is more personal than a typed message. So I'll use Vidyard. Vidyard is free, by the way. You don't have to pay for it. And you can create a little video and say, hey, Pat, here, I was looking at your profile, and here's what intrigued me. And this is why I'm reaching out, thinking maybe we could connect, right? So it's personal. It's about something they've said or done on their profile. And then I'll reach out specifically about that and say, would you be open to having a conversation? Right? You got to be different than everybody else. You can't spam people. So using InMail. Now, by the way, free LinkedIn versus paid LinkedIn. You got to have paid. I'm sorry. It's like anything. They give you enough to go, here's LinkedIn. But if you're not paying at least the premium level, and again, I don't make money by selling LinkedIn subscriptions, just again, full disclosure. But I mean, paid LinkedIn is paid LinkedIn, and you have way better search tools and capabilities. So then become an expert in your area. So post, right? Content. Why should I listen to you? Right? What are you an expert in? You got to share information and knowledge and get people to, you got to do it regularly. It's a lot of work to use tools like LinkedIn, but you can. I use LinkedIn to reach out to people directly. I use video to do it. I get conversations, right? I also, all my clients, so I'll look at their LinkedIn profile. I can see who they're connected to, and I'll ask for introductions to specific people. I'll use it that way. B2C, a little bit different, right? Because again, we got to, there's more of that barrier between, you're selling me something and I don't want to talk to you, right? There's that a little bit of barrier.
Right.
So trade shows can be really good. If your product or service is visually oriented, Instagram works really well, right? Like a cleaning business, a home cleaning business. Oh man, work you're doing, what before, afters, all that stuff about cleaning, home cleaning tips. That would be perfect on Instagram. Landscaping, Instagram, right? If I'm in a landscaping business, totally doing Instagram with that. I also would probably use LinkedIn and look for small business owners. Why? They're busy and probably don't want to cut their lawn. Right? So I would then go to LinkedIn and say, hey, you probably have 8,000 land care businesses. Here's why I'm reaching out to you specifically, wondering if you'd be open to talk. By the way, I got cold LinkedIn prospected by a cleaning company 2 weeks ago, and my cleaner happened to quit, and that's how they got my lead. They reached out to me. I talked to them, and so it works, right? I mean, I needed it. They happened to catch me at the right time, and that's how they got my business. Now they got to keep it. They got to do a good job, but that's how it started.
Any other questions before we let Chad go? Because we're already 10 minutes past.
Yeah, we're over. Sorry. If anybody has any questions, you can always, I don't know if you can email Cecile and just let her know. I can always respond through email after.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chad, for sharing more than I asked of you today and sharing your time and your talent. And I thank everybody for joining us. Next week, we are on the 17th. We're doing a session on branding. And then on the 30th, we're doing one on the idea napkin. So I hope to see you again, and everybody have an amazing day.